it does seem like where we get media from is evolving. And it's not, just newspapers anymore or TV and radio. It is people on TikTok. It is Instagram influencers. And they're still seeing the value in the wire.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. I'm going to be honest. Today's guest is here because I want to learn how to get public relations coverage for pennies on the dollar of what the big players charge, and in reality, from what I see, don't deliver on. Plus, it's in line with being more resourceful in finding better ways to control your message while spending less. Mickie Kennedy believes that with some effort and a little money, the possibilities are endless. He's an expert at helping small businesses, authors, and startups increase their visibility and credibility. That means more trust. Mickie founded eReleases 25 years ago, realizing that small businesses desperately need a press release service they can actually afford, giving them access to the media and to national news wires, all with a personal touch. He's great at creative writing, and his stuff has been in the Wall Street Journal, CNN, and so many other places. Let's meet Mickie and learn how we can do this too. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Mickie Kennedy. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here.
And I am excited to learn from you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So I started it a little over 25 years ago. I had ended up at a telecom research firm about 27 years ago, and I was employee number 3. And I had a writing background, even though it was creative writing. I'd finished an MFA in creative writing. They wanted me to write press releases and send them out. And I did, and not much happened. And so I went and looked at what journalists were writing and discovered that I was just releasing data and not releasing the ingredients that they needed, which is, they like to build a story arc. And once I realized that, I went back into the data and said, what's the story behind some of this data? And pulled those out, sent it out, and started to get lots of media pickup. And it was very transformative for this small business, and it continued to work. So I felt like I could do that for others. And so I spent about a year just reaching out to journalists at the time, mostly in bulletin boards, which were popular 26 years ago. And so I had about 10,000 journalists when I launched in October of 1998. And over the years, PR Newswire reached out to us and said, hey, we like what you're doing. Is there a way we could support you? And I didn't think so, because they charged $1,600 for a national press release of 600 words. And I was charging my clients just about $300. And so eventually we came to some pricing that worked. So everybody that goes through eReleases gets a national distribution on PR Newswire, and they don't have to pay anything close to $1,600. It's probably about, with a new customer special, about a third of the price.
Nice. Out of curiosity, because you've been doing this so long, have the rules of the game changed? And what I mean by that is not necessarily how you tell your story arc, but, back in 2000, everybody read the paper. They got magazines, and that has changed. So how has that kind of affected everything?
Right. So I guess around 15 years ago, I had to go to bat with the Newswire to get a blogger that I knew journalist access to the wire. Anybody can look at the releases that publicly hit the wire, but having access is really cool because you can look at an industry feed and you can customize it. So exclude keywords and stuff like that. And I just told them that this particular blogger gets more traffic than the leading trade publication in that industry. And they really rethought things and opened the door to bloggers a little over 15 years ago. And I've been pleasantly surprised that they've been very open since. There are Instagram influencers that are particularly very powerful in the fashion world that have journalist access. There are, other people. I follow somebody on TikTok called Snackalator who each week does a grocery store roundup of new snacks hitting shelves. And he says, I pull all of these photos off of the wire and, the press releases, because I remember once he was saying, I can't tell if that's a glaze or icing, but, this photo's from the press release off the wire, but I'm really excited to see it. And so I reached out to him and said, do you rely on press releases exclusively? And he goes, yeah. He goes, that's when the company announces it, and I get there before everybody else. If I waited until they hit my store shelves, I would be very late. So it does seem like where we get media from is evolving. And it's not, just newspapers anymore or TV and radio. It is people on TikTok. It is Instagram influencers, and they're still seeing the value in the wire. I actually think that the fact that the media industry hasn't been doing very good has been very good for the wires, because it used to be around 3 wires with one that had worked for a while to try to establish itself. And then they pivoted and gave up. And so journalists just fish in 2 ponds when it comes to the wire of press releases. And that's Business Wire and PR Newswire. That third one that pivoted out of, focusing on trying to work with journalists was GlobeWire. And they decided that they would just market themselves to publicly traded companies looking to meet disclosure requirements, and didn't really want journalists looking too closely at their financials and other results. And so despite that, there are wires that other people have probably heard of, like the Associated Press and Reuters and UPI, and they don't transmit press releases. They may receive them, but what they transmit are articles written by them. And newspapers take those articles and pay a licensing fee. So rather than the Baltimore Sun in my backyard writing an article when the Supreme Court hands down a decision and they know that their editors are busy at the moment, they can just pull that article, pay a licensing fee, and that's how that works. And then what also confuses the marketplace is there's probably 30 companies out there right now with wire in their names that market themselves for press releases, and they don't reach journalists. They're mostly into what's called syndication, where your press release gets replicated on certain websites, but it's not an article written about you. And they're usually on sections of the website that no one sees. And so it really isn't going to generate much of anything. It's mostly people who put logos of, like, I was on this Fox affiliate and this ABC News affiliate and things like that. So that's pretty much the landscape of PR and newswires at the moment.
What's the difference between the business one and the PR one?
So they're very similar. It really is a good duopoly that they just keep each other in check. Because if it's a duopoly, you're paying more than you should. But, some people just prefer one over the other, but they're pretty similar. Journalists fish in both oceans because they are both extremely large, and they move the majority of press releases that hit the wire.
So if you're a local company, maybe you're B2B or you're B2C, how does this help you to generate revenue?
Right. So it is frustrating because you don't control what happens when you get media pickup. And I've seen, media pickup that we get, and it doesn't generate much in the way of sales, maybe not much in the way of leads. And then sometimes we will get a customer who just gets an influx of leads and sales from an article. And it's really hard to predict. I do find that trade publications, if the readers are your customers, are generally the ones that do result in leads and pick up. But that being said, we've gotten picked up in the Wall Street Journal, and that's resulted in sales. I've seen pick up in the Wall Street Journal that didn't, and so it really is hard to predict. What's going to lead into sales or leads. But the one good thing is that if you take that article and then share it with your leads, you'll convert more than you normally do. If you share it with your customers, you'll see less churn. And the reason for that is when you get media pickup, it is like a huge credibility boost. It's almost like an implied endorsement when a journalist chooses to write about you. And those people that were considering shopping around that year are going to say, we're with the right company. They see that, it gets that signal of trust, and they feel very comfortable with who they have. And the same thing with leads. Like if you convert 20% of your leads, all of a sudden you get some earned media in front of them. You might find that you get an uptick to 25% or 30% or even higher of your leads convert. I had a carpet company we did a 1-year campaign for that I told them, don't waste your money on me. And they said, we've already earmarked the money for a PR campaign this year. We're going to do 12 releases. And if it's not with you, it'll be with someone else. So I took their money. And after 5 months of nothing, I felt so bad for them that we did a brainstorm. And I asked them who their biggest enemy was. And rather than Tom across the street with the rug emporium, they said it was the big box home improvement stores. And I thought that was fascinating. So they shared more about that. And we wrote a press release sort of attacking the big box home improvement stores and how bad they are for the carpet industry. And that got picked up by over 10 floor trade publications, articles. And at the end of the year, we had just around 30 articles, including their local newspaper and New Jersey Magazine. And they put it all together in what they call a brag book. And every time they give a quote, they would just open it and say, we may not come in the cheapest, but we've been profiled in Floor Trade Weekly. Here we are in this publication. And just by adding that to the sales conversation, an extra minute or two, they increased their conversion 17%. So almost 1 out of every 5 lead that they were previously losing, they were now converting.
Wow. That's impressive. So it sounds like it's part of a strategy. It's not a, hey, I'm going to do this and people are going to dial me up and buy my stuff.
I mean, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And you just kind of have to roll with it and continue going. And sometimes you'll get those hits that do, make the phone ring and do result in conversions. And then sometimes it's just the earned media that you put in front of your leads and customers and add to your website and sort of move on from there. But I do find that it does help you over time. I think it's one of the reasons that we work with a lot of startups, especially those that appear on Shark Tank. And the producers recommend us and say that they should do a release before their episode airs. And some of them stick around and do more releases. And generally, they do a lot of press releases over a 6-month cycle and try to get as much earned media as they can. And then they cut on paid marketing. And they do that because they know that they convert better once they've achieved a little bit of earned media and have the logos on the website, the articles mentioned and linked and stuff like that.
Interesting. So if someone wanted to do a 6-month campaign, like what does something like that cost?
Well, it's hard to say because I feel like a 6-month campaign for a startup could be a release every month. And I think that most small businesses don't need to do a press release every month.
Okay.
I tell people that, if you're going to try PR, do a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases. If it takes you do a release every other month, that's fine. If it takes you that you're, sometimes doing them quarterly, that's fine. But really sit back and measure 6 to 8 releases. And you want each one to be strategically different. And you ideally want to do meaningful strategic releases. And when I say that, I mean, the types of releases I don't think you should be doing are the personnel hiring press release. It's one of the most common ones we see, and it's usually not a new executive, and it's usually not an industry veteran. And I just feel like it's a waste of opportunity to pay to go over the wire with something like that. You'd probably be just as well off as just reaching out to your local paper and emailing them a photo and a couple sentences about the new hire. And the same thing with trade publications as well.
Interesting. And I think a lot of people may not even know how to do that. Is that something you show them how to do? Just how to build that email to the local and
Well,
to
it's
the
something that
trade?
I talk about, and I have a strategic masterclass where I go into detail about the strategic types of releases as well as how to get that local media. It's available free for anyone who wants it. It's at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. But when it comes to local media, I always tell people you are the best to get local media, and you shouldn't pay someone to get local media. If you think about it, there are probably less than 10 people in your local market that could cover you. Find out who those 10 people are, and now you have a Rolodex of people to reach out to on a regular basis. And by regular, I'm talking maybe quarterly or every other month or as you have ideas. And I do like to do at least quarterly so that you're on their radar. And don't be discouraged, because I tell people the first year is just warming them up. And it really is just getting in their headspace. What I tell people also is your first media pickup probably won't be what you pitched. It will probably be them calling you and saying, "Hey, I'm working on a story about XYZ. I know you've emailed me in the past, and I thought that you would be perfect for it. Could I get a quote from you about this?" And, that's usually the way it works. And then you just stay on their radar. And it's the reason that, like in the Baltimore Sun, there is one company that I see 3 to 4 times every year in the paper. And, if it's a HR work culture issue, they get plugged in. If it's, charitable giving, they get plugged in. And I saw them at a EO event in Baltimore and asked them, "Do you pay a lot to advertise in the Baltimore Sun?" He goes, "I've never paid to advertise. It's just I pitched them. And when they did start reaching out to me, I dropped everything and got my team on board, and we responded with amazing quotes, photos, whatever they needed. And we know that they know that when they're in a story, that we will drop everything and be available for them to plug into a story. And we just continue to get the love. And that's as easy as it is. It's just establishing those relationships. And I tell people, look in the paper, your local paper, who writes about your industry, get their email address. If it's not online, call and ask. And people are always shocked at that. And I'm like, well, these aren't celebrities. These are members of the community. They should be accessible to local businesses. And you just ask the person, say, "Hey, I'm a local business and I would like to send a story idea to so-and-so. Could I get their email address?" And they'll either give it to you or ring you through to them. And again, you just ask for it and go from there. And the same thing if there's a business magazine or business newspaper who writes about your industry, and then you look, and are there magazines that are appropriate? There's a consumer magazine called Baltimore here. There's one similar called, I think, Washingtonian in DC. Or are you more B2B? Find out what the market's like. You can even look at TV and radio, and if they sometimes have segments on the news where they spotlight businesses, call and ask who's the producer or booker of that segment, and get their email address, and just do the same. Reach out to these people at least quarterly, and you'll find that over time you will get picked up. You don't need to write a release and send to them. It's just a short pitch, just a couple of sentences, maybe add a great quote. Because if a journalist sees an amazing quote, they know that they can write an amazing article around that if it's an interesting idea. And by amazing quote, I mean, it could be if you're a wordsmith, but more likely than not, it's just you paraphrased and said something very strongly with a lot of conviction. And it's very tight and concise. And I think that can work really well.
Having a point of view that's countercultural, indirect, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How hard is it to get into some of these business magazines? I don't even know what they all like. Inc. or is it Fast Company? I don't even know what all the magazines are.
Right.
Is it hard to get into those?
It's not easy,
Okay.
but we've had several clients that did it. I had one client who shared an embarrassing story that they said, years ago, before they had a warehouse and lots of staff, that they got hit with a bunch of orders right before Thanksgiving. And so they sort of canceled Thanksgiving and got the whole extended family out there, putting packages together. And so I said we should share that. And, I find that a lot of small businesses kind of want to appear bigger and more powerful than they are. And as a result, a lot of your most interesting and human interest elements get sort of pushed aside. And so I had to fight for them to include that, but we did. And that was the introduction to a 2-page spread in Inc. magazine, this little embarrassing story that was, early in their life. And they still didn't understand why they led with that. And I just said, it's something that all these entrepreneurs can relate to. I'm not that exact thing, but we all have setbacks and problems and things that where, family gets pushed aside a little for entrepreneurs and things like that. And so I felt that was very relatable. But it can happen. It's a little bit of luck, and it's a little bit of having an interesting story. And these personal stories, these human interest elements, I think work really well to get into the pages of like Inc. magazine and Fast Company, because it is not necessarily what you do and your niche. Having a really defined niche is important, but it's really just having something that they know is going to entertain and that their readers and educate them as well. So I think having fun anecdotes, interesting stories, sharing things like that can do well. I think it's one of the reasons that, everybody that does drop onto Shark Tank really opens with their story. And sometimes it's like vulnerability. They lost someone and, or they just went through a divorce, or, sometimes they can be whimsical and fun, but it is something that sort of cuts through, corporations and business and makes you sort of care about them as people.
You want to know their why is literally what it comes down to. Now, the reason most people fail on Shark Tank is because they don't know their numbers, they can't explain them, and they don't make sense.
Right.
You fix that part. And it's amazing to me how many people go on that show and they're like, oh, you wanted to know my numbers? I don't understand that. It's like everyone's going to ask you, what are your sales? What's your net profit? What's your gross profit? And yet so many of them struggle with that, or they don't even know how they compare to the industry or whatever it is, or to their valuation. And that's usually what gets them crushed, unfortunately.
Right. And sometimes they're not as naive as you think. I've talked to a couple and they've said, we didn't want a deal. We did not want to give up a chunk of our company, but we wanted the bump from being on TV. So we did seem a little uncertain of things in a deliberate way.
So, and people don't realize that. What is the average episode? About a person up there, about 15 minutes, maybe?
Yeah.
Yet they actually spend hours recording, and then they cut it together to show a story. So the Shark Tank people are playing their game, and the people going on, I mean, think about it. That essentially is the perfect PR gig, right?
Right.
You get in front of tons of people, and I bought stuff because I saw it on Shark Tank. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I will try it, and you go look them up and you go do that. It's all a game, and you got to learn to play the game, right? And
Right.
at the end of the day, it's relationships and stories,
Right.
and learning how to tell yours and making that happen.
Yeah. It was a few years ago that I was watching Shark Tank, and I was like, person after person, I was like almost half of these people do releases with us. And so I was like, that's interesting. So I reached out to them and I said, oh yeah, the producers recommended you guys. And so then I circled back with the producers and said, can I get a quote or something I could use? They said, not only can you not get a quote, if you mention Shark Tank on your website, our lawyers will probably come after you. And I was like, okay, but they continue to still promote us. So
we're going to talk about something about that after this. That would be interesting. So, we're in the world of AI, and everyone in the beginning was amazed. But I'm also hearing now that if you just let AI do your writing, it's not going to work. Like, there seems to be the lack of genuineness. But really what's more important, and I don't know if people realize this, AI will not take a stand and make a point. So if you've got a point to make, you have to go around AI. Like whenever I want to write a nasty complaint letter and I give it to AI, they start lecturing me about my tone. I'm like, excuse me, there is a reason for this tone. How about you go lecture the people I'm writing to?
Right.
I think it's a good tool, but you have to use it appropriately. Do you see that to be the case? Or is there an over-reliance, or people still learning how to do all of that?
I think people are still learning, and a lot of my customers that aren't very sophisticated are intimidated by it. I
Oh,
feel that when it comes to AI, I've had it write some decent press releases, but my approach is different than most people. I would never trust AI to come up with the idea for the press release. It's been trained on all the releases that are out there. And I would say probably 97% of press releases aren't effective. They probably don't generate earned media. And that's why, like, that strategic masterclass focuses on the strategic releases, the 3% that I see patterns getting pick up again and again. And so I approach AI, if I do lean on it, I tell it, hey, I have this exact topic that I want you to write. How would you structure a press release like this? And then it gives me a structure or outline. And if I like it, okay, I'm like, okay, now give me 10 headline variations for this. And then I'll pick one and I'll say, okay, I kind of liked this angle. Give me 5 variations of that. And then I approach it paragraph by paragraph. And then I go back and I've never had it write a decent quote. And I think it gets to that conviction and having a strong point of view. I generally have to take a quote that it's written and put it in my language and amp it up a million times because, like you said, AI doesn't want to have a strong point of view. It doesn't want to have a quote that just resonates and is so precise and strong that it stands out. And yet that is one of the most killer ways to get an article about you. If a journalist is considering 2 articles that are similar newsworthiness and one just has an amazing quote, they know that they can write around that and have a better story. And so, that's one of the areas that I feel that AI is lacking. But I would never trust AI to just write a press release. When you just unleash it, it writes lazily. And I find that if you get it to break down paragraph by paragraph, you'll get a stronger result in the end. And then sometimes if I'm not happy with like the 3rd paragraph, I'll just say, I'm not happy with this paragraph. Give me 8 different variations of this. And sometimes I'll tell it between each variation, stop, pause, think about it. How can I make that next paragraph more distinct and more powerful? And I find that when you tell AI to slow down, it doesn't. But it does, but it doesn't. It still comes out very fast, but I get a different product. I get a more thoughtful product. And so it's interesting that AI wants to be lazy and fast because I think that's what we want. But if you attack it the way I did, I find I can get a decent press release at the end of the day. And, I prefer to write my press releases, but I know that a lot of my customers are, it's too cost prohibitive to pay me to write the release, even though we offer it. And they also are, not confident in their writing. So I feel like, going through some of these exercises with them and showing them how to get a better result is valuable to them.
so it's funny. Years ago, when I was learning about copywriting, what they basically did was they said, here are the best 100 copy articles that are out there. And they said, the way you learn to copy is to literally copy. They go, I want you to take a pad and paper and I want you to handwrite each one of these 100 articles. And they said it creates a certain muscle memory. Now, today, what I would do is I would take the 3% of PRs, create a custom chatbot, tell it what I want, put the 3% of 20 or 30 articles in there and go, here's my story. And I find if I give it my story and then I say, follow this pattern. And then again, like you said, it's step by step by step, one at a time. And if you don't like the results of that step, I tell it to go back. Or sometimes I will take it and I'll make some changes. And I go, I like this better. Now make it better. And so that interaction is really what kind of works to bring it about. And I think, you have to be, so we always talk about being more resourceful. This is a classic of how you be more resourceful. Now, if your time is valuable, okay, pay Mickie. But if you don't have the money, then do it. The thing is, nothing against you, right? If you learn how to do this, it becomes a skill that over time becomes automatic. Or you outsource it. You got to figure out what you want to do and what works for you. And that's kind of what it is. You've talked a little bit about how you help people. You want to kind of wrap it up and just kind of let people know what you do and how you do it?
Sure. So all of our releases at eReleases today go out nationally through PR Newswire. They normally charge $1,600 plus for a 600-word press release. With us, especially with the new customer special that we have in our footer, it's about a third of the price. So it's a big savings coming to us. We help small businesses and entrepreneurs with PR, getting their press release out over the wire. And, if you want to check us out, the website's eReleases.com. We have chat, email, phone, and there's no salespeople. It's just we have about 6 editors, and we're very used to helping people with their first PR campaign. If you have a press release you want us to take a look at, you can send it to us, whether you're a customer or not. Allow a couple business days to get back to you, but we'll give you some suggestions or whether we think it's working or not. And we're really passionate about helping small businesses. So we're very accessible and easy to work with. And we don't work with a big upfront payment or anything like that. It's very a la carte per press release. And we try to make it very affordable for people.
I like that. You made a comment earlier. I wanted to follow up on it. Are you part of VO?
I am. I'm part of the Baltimore chapter.
How has that helped you?
So I think it's helped me quite a bit to just have other business owners that you can lean on and talk to. We have a very intimate little forum that we meet with monthly. And it's just really great to have other business people that you can talk about issues. I mean, even when you're talking about, like, say, family issues, there's always the background that we're business owners and entrepreneurs. So a lot of our family dynamics are because they don't understand that we've got to roll out and we're just not going to be accessible I'm not a father or a spouse for the next week or anything like that. And so I find that really valuable. And there's also a lot of resources that other EO members pass along to people, and people that are good to work with and things like that. So I like it a lot. I find it a very valuable resource, and really helps me to feel like I'm part of the community.
Cool. I'm a big fan of EO, big fan of EOS. We love all these systems and processes and kind of that hive mind of getting into a mastermind group and being able to do that. You mentioned the free course earlier. Why don't you just go ahead and mention it again as we close out?
It's eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And basically, I went through the 3% of press releases that work and found patterns that work again and again. And so if you don't know much about PR, but you start there and you build a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases and you followed most of those, you will have a lot more hits than misses with press releases. And I think that is really valuable, and it's free. And people say I should put a paywall around it, but I'm just like, I want my customers and others to be doing more meaningful releases, because if they have more hits, I know they'll come back and do more releases.
And that's the key. Always be giving is what I say. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Do you need public relations? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. What you don't need is what 90% of the companies do for PR, which is to waste money on stuff no one cares about. It has to be part of your bigger strategy, and it has to provide a return on investment. And you don't need an expensive PR firm to help, especially with AI now. These days, it's become easier and easier to be able to do this. Ask me about the time I was on the front page of our local business journal. I didn't pay for that. They gave me a whole big spread and a whole big picture. You can do it too. And at the end of the day, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful, like finding services like this and doing it yourself. Remember, let's focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you, so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.